Hello, founders. We are Startups.com, and we are coming to you live. We got a real great show for you every Tuesday. Guess what? As scheduled, we do pitch deck reviews. We're going to pitch deck review. Not only will we look at your pitch decks, but we're also going to ask, does it unicorn? Are you going to raise money? Right. That's what founders want to know, whether you want to go unicorn or not, but it's a good discussion always to have. Today, as always, I have my co-pilot, my partner in crime, joining me, Will Schroeder, 9-time founder, 5 exits. He is the CEO and founder of Startups.com. Will, what's going on? What are you seeing in startup land these days? If you took a temperature, what's the state of the union?
I'd tell you what, so last week I was headlining a conference, an entrepreneurship conference, and there was a ton of college students there. And, I asked them, I said, tell me about the biggest problem that you want to solve. And I started going a bunch of explanation as to what a problem statement is, et cetera. They didn't need my help whatsoever.
That's good.
The world's a different place, man. People are ready to go. Things like Shark Tank have conditioned people, even though that's not how reality works. It's got them excited about their ideas. People are just firing off different ideas left and right. It was just awesome to see.
I think that this new generation entrepreneurs are more optimistic than ever. And
which is a big deal.
It's a great time, Will, to get into startups. That's all I got to say.
It is.
We are doing the pitch deck reviews. Once again, we do this every Tuesday. Want to encourage all of you in the audience, use the Q&A box or chat to ask questions. We have Jen lurking in the chats, making sure that your questions are going to be taken care of and guiding you so that you can ask us anything you want. Feel free to take over the entire discussion. We're here to answer your questions. We want to prioritize what you want to know, and it's always appreciated. If you are on the YouTubes and you are doing the social media thing, we'd appreciate do the like, comment, subscribe. That is always something that we look forward to interacting with you out there. Share it with a founder friend. Let people know. If you haven't checked us out yet, check us out at Startups.com because this show is brought to you by us. Startups.com. Will, what's the invitation for everybody to join us at Startups.com? What can they expect?
What's interesting is for a lot of folks that are coming on now, especially if you're looking at pitch deck, we have a million ways to help you. But one thing I'd recommend is kind of like this. Jump in the pitch deck workshop. And I'll walk you through slide by slide exactly how to build a deck so you're not guessing at this stuff. And I would say start there. Just start in a workshop. I'll walk you through the slides. And then we can start to do a deeper dive into where specifically you need help. But use that as a jumping off point.
Well, I am not being hyperbolic when I say we literally look at multiple pitch decks a day. We're helping founders and we make it so approachable, so easy just to come and get feedback. And that's my invitation to everybody out there. If you want your pitch deck reviewed like we're going to do today, all you have to do is contact us and say, hey, put me in the queue. We are here for you. We're going to go deeper into these pitch decks than normally anybody would. And we just want everybody to learn together. And Will, I think you would echo, we're so grateful and we just cherish our founders and we say you're courageous for sending the pitch deck in.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And you know what? The big thing with us is we're just kind. Right? Like we're not trying to Mark Cuban you where we're trying to make you feel bad about your idea for television, right? At all. Like our job is to tell you how it will work, not how it won't work. I always get frustrated, Ed, when people are like, oh, well, I'll critique your deck and tell you why your business won't work. I'm like, that's easy. Say why something won't work. I don't need help with that whatsoever. I need help with the part where you actually show me how to make it work and give me the tools to do that. So that's where we come in. We come in and say, here's what to say. Here's what to do.
I definitely try to be kind, Will. That's a page I'm taking out of your book. You're so generous in giving out the advice. And just a reminder for everyone, Will runs the Pitch Deck Perfection. He's the pitch deck doctor, runs workshops on pitch decks and funding every single Wednesday. And then there are multiple opportunities you can join the other founders. Let's take a look, Will. We have this pitch deck here. Doculi AI, and we're going to start off with the cover page like we always try to do. AI-powered site selection for affordable housing. And we've got a little description here that says we're an AI-powered platform, streamlined site selection for affordable housing development, helping developers win tax credits, build better affordable housing projects. Right away, front page, what's the impression, Will?
You know what? I like it. I say this because it actually explains what they're doing. So many title slides that we see, people think of it as if it's just the placeholder before your presentation starts. It's the only slide on the deck that people are guaranteed to see. So make sure it sells the vision. Make it simple, but make sure it sells the vision.
Yes, and it's straightforward. It doesn't have all the hype or the buzzy words and everything.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be just a little picky, like this is great right here. I don't think we need this as much. Yeah. I think you're going to get everything you need right in here, Will.
I agree. Less is always more. And in this case, they just did a great job of nailing the explanation, which is so rare. So, great start. Great start.
let's stop for a moment because I see this on pitch decks every now and then. I know you see this all over the place. Well, we've got this pre-seed and date. So we got the name of the round plus the date. What are your thoughts on putting that right on the cover?
Well, one thing is I never date a deck. I never put any kind of dates whatsoever for a few reasons. One, because there tends to be lots of iterations of your deck floating out there. And I don't want people to feel like they've got some version of a deck, even though they kind of assume that they might. And the second part is, in general, when I'm sharing the deck, people are going to assume it's the most current. So if I'm about to talk to you about my deck and it says November 2024, and it's February of 2025, it feels like something's off. So it just doesn't buy you much.
Sure. And then what about saying pre-seed?
That doesn't bother me. Honestly, I never see it. I don't know about you, but I never see that on a deck, not on the title page.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's just one more thing you have to update or one more thing detail, and just simpler is better. I say we're going to know it's seed, or the investor knows I'm a seed investor or pre-seed investor. That's just my thought on it. It's just a little quibble when it comes to this. All preference. Oh, yeah, well, and let's talk about this. Let's just step back because, well, we get this all the time. It's like, but Ed, Sequoia tells me to do decks like this, and Guy Kawasaki tells me to do like this, and Slide Bean does decks like that. What is your response when people come to us and say there are a gajillion ways to do their decks?
Look, man, people have raised trillions of dollars without our help, Ed, right? So clearly the way we do it is not the only way to do it, right? That said, people have also raised trillions of dollars with really crappy decks.
Yes.
Okay, just to be clear. What we're saying is you get one shot at this. We'll give you a very specific way to do it, and you make it, what you want to make it. You take our advice and you mold it into what you want the deck to be, but compared to just freestyling it or downloading a template and hoping that works, our approach is way better, and most people use it verbatim.
We're going to teach you the basics, and then just like any painter or jazz musician, go and improvise to your heart's content, but take care of the basics, because so many founders don't cover the basics, and no matter what fancy trick or technique they put onto their top of their pitch decks, it's just not going to work until you get the basics covered.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think we do a really nice job of getting you to a place initially where we give you a framework to answer all these questions.
Doculi AI helps developers find great sites that win tax credits. I see this happen quite a bit. We have 1, 2, 3, this introduction or executive summary slide. Well, let's talk about the benefits of this, the drawbacks, and really what we are looking for in the first slide.
Totally fair. Okay, so the challenge is you're saying that we help developers find great sites that win tax credits. Awesome. But I don't know what problem you're solving. See, the assumption here, and this is the number one challenge we run into when folks are trying to do their elevator pitch, their initial pitch, et cetera, they tell the audience what the product does. And I get it. It kind of makes sense. Just tell them what it does. But they forget the setup, which is, why is this a problem? For all I know, developers have no problem finding great sites. And I have no context for why tax credits would be even remotely relevant. So when you say this is what we do, you're assuming I know all those things, which is a big miss.
And I'm going to point something else out. This is immediate where I start having some cognitive friction. Because if I go back to the page, you promised me something, for affordable housing, and you give me this description. Let's say I just read this description, right?
Yeah.
And then we get into all these additional details, and now you're introducing these concepts and site scoring and all those things. And let's break it down. Like, explain why, for everybody out there, why investors, it's like a tried and true technique. And this comes from the Sequoia method, one of the biggest games in town.
Yeah.
Start with the problem. Why, Will?
Why start with the problem?
Yeah.
Because it frames why the solution matters. If we don't open up with the problem to say, this is what's frustrating these customers, by the way, the number of customers or how much money they're spending or losing, if we don't open up with that problem in the weight, in the capacity of that problem, then when we present the solution, it doesn't have nearly as much value.
Yeah.
So one of the things you pointed out, though, Ed, in looking at this intro slide, and this is very common, is we're starting to fragment the narrative.
Exactly.
Whereas a minute ago, we might have just said, hey, this is all about site selection. Now we're talking about housing shortage. Now we're talking about tax credits. Now we're talking about site scoring, et cetera. And all of it, I'm sure, ties together. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it ties together. But you got to remember that the audience, the investor, has a very narrow window of focus. And so every time we add new information, all we're doing is confusing the investor more. We want a very narrow focus. This is exactly the problem. This is exactly the solution that fixes that problem.
And let me explain for everyone, just from an investor's standpoint. As an investor, I'm sitting here going, how clear is the problem and how severe is it? Because problems make money. And that's what you're saying, Will, is if you couch the problem properly, people run to the solution like, thank God, this is going to save us. It's going to make a lot of money. And investors are there to make money. And I'm not going to get into this, but even with CPG products, when you may think I'm not really solving a life and death problem, it's still a problem that you're solving that creates a market demand that makes money. And that's why investors start with the problem. And here's where we're going to kind of go off the tracks a little bit. And I'll let Will kind of explain what's going on here, because here's the problem slide. And it just says, now, let me just point out a few things so we don't have to be redundant. One, I love the fact that we got problem small in the top left corner. Good practice. And we got this nice stark headline that says site selection is important, but expensive and manual. And then we got the rest. We'll break this down for us. Does this work? Doesn't it work? Why not?
I think the elements, the ingredients are there. But I think the way we presented this is too complex. Here's the specific formula we want to use. We want to open up with who specifically is this a problem for, okay? We're saying site selection is important, but we haven't told the audience exactly who the buyer is. So what I want to hear is that for commercial developers, if that's it, I'm assuming it is. For commercial developers currently lose $2 billion per year on site selection that is X, Y, and Z, okay? Again, I'm going to say it again. Commercial developers, or whoever specifically is the buying audience, we always open up with who the audience is. Spend or lose a dollar figure. I made up $2 billion. I have no idea what it is. We're implying some of this by high cost per state, et cetera. But I need to know immediately from the get-go, as an investor, how much money is on the table. And if you're not sure where this number comes from, it's your total addressable market that we'll see in a couple slides. But the next part, which is, okay, $2 billion problem of money being lost because of this, this, and this. This is essentially what we kind of have here. We have complexity, we have reactive, but we need to dial that into a single sentence. What you're asking me to do as the audience is formulate and understand 4 different concepts the way you understand them as the founder. Very difficult to do, especially when you're not in the room.
And I'm going to point something else out, Will, which is going to be a theme, is right away, let's go back to the story you set me up with, because a pitch deck is a narrative, it's a story. So right away, I get into it. You gave me this power for site selection for affordable housing, great. And then you introduce tax credits. And then in introduction, you talk about tax credits, right? And then in the problem, I don't see anything to do with tax credits or how those relate, right?
Good eye.
And this is the issue. Now, Will, I fully accept, I'm not an expert in this space, so the founder's probably sitting there going, no, this is what I really meant, but you're not going to be over there talking to the investor over their shoulder. And so other people who have industry knowledge may say, duh, Ed, tax credits and housing, affordable housing selection go hand in hand. I don't know. And that's the problem.
You bet. And let's pause there for a second, because you said something I think is really important, Ed. You said the founder isn't there over their shoulder explaining it. It's really important for folks listening to know that 100% of the time, your deck will get digested without you in the room. Because every investor is going to say, send me your deck first before they agree to meet with you, okay? With some exceptions being like a pitch competition or something like that. The reason I say 100% of the time is because we know for sure we're going to email our deck ahead of time, and it'll get digested without us, meaning the deck has to be able to stand on its own without us explaining it. There's a second part where the investor says, hey, will you come pitch it? And then you get to fill in the blanks. Ed, tell me what you think about this. I talk to a lot of founders that say, hey, I've pitched this a bunch of times and people are cool with it. And I'm like, yeah, because you're in the room every time. Do you see that?
Happens all the time. And then it just contributes. Again, depends on who you're pitching to, because that can create like a little echo chamber in your mind. But then you just start to take for granted that that voiceover is going to pop up and echo in the back of their mind. You got the little fairy godmother, like, or you're sitting there as the good angel on their shoulder explaining things. And so, you know, Will, you talk about this all the time. Just do the raw test. Like, don't say anything. Just show it to them and then say, hey, what did you learn? What did you glean from it? And they're like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, that's a really great way of knowing whether, as you describe it, your deck will work like naked. Just like every slide has to work without pictures. The deck has to work without your voiceover.
Absolutely. It has to be able to stand on its own without you. So when we're talking about this stuff and you're like, oh, no, well, I would have just explained that to the investor, you know, while I was there. Agreed. But if it doesn't stand on its own before that, then you're never going to get to the part where you do get to present it. So it's a little bit tricky.
Let's move to the solution slide. And I'm just going to have the same problem, is that I don't see, I'm looking right now, I do not see the word tax credits. And this is the solution slide. I don't see the tax credits terminology. And so now I really am lost, Will. And, you know, we're going to try to piece it together. But I'm just telling you right now, I'm lost.
It's a lot of things. Now, I think when I look at this, right, Ed, first off, we need to make sure that whatever we put on here before we write a thing, that it specifically follows what we said the problem was.
Right.
And I can see some of the mappings here. So again, I don't think we're that far off. But the problem we run into as we compare the problem and solution slides is I've got to remember all those 4 different points that you made, then go to the next slide and remember how they map back. I know that doesn't sound like a big lift. If you're saying, well, yeah, look, if you sit here in 1 minute, you're going to figure that out. Sort of. Not when I need to look at 20 other decks today. I think that's the part, again, founders overlook when we're thinking about how our decks are going to get digested. We have this like fantasy in our mind that the investor is either like the equivalent of somebody doing mortgage approvals where they have to go through every app in detail, or a professor where they have to like read everything and give you their feedback. It's none of that. You cannot find a more disinterested person trying to rip through your deck and come up with every reason not to read the rest of this deck, right? So as soon as we have these disconnects, and Ed, you and I talk about this all the time, right? Like when we're reviewing these decks, as soon as we start to introduce a disconnect in the first couple slides,
ooh, yeah,
it is a huge issue because I'm an investor. I've got 20 more decks to look at. As soon as you create, what did you say? Cognitive friction or something? Yeah. Think about it, Ed, when you were a GP at a firm and you were reviewing decks, how much time and headspace did you give to a given deck?
I give this same thing. It literally was like this. Okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm busy. I'm probably traveling. I'm just fitting these in. 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds. And if you're in the ballpark, you'll look for it. Does it fit? Right size investor, everything like that. Then you get then you get 90 seconds total. So I do another minute. And then if it's promising, I maybe will spend 3 minutes total, or I'll spend an additional 3 minutes. But what I'll normally do, Will, and you point this out, I usually then just put it in the maybe pile, maybe for later, and I just move on because I got so many to deal with. And that's what you call the sorting decision that I go through. And it is literally that small amount of time. And that's common for scouts, analysts, people, because think about the hundreds of decks that they see.
And we're competing with all of those other decks for that attention. So just something to keep in mind while we're putting these slides together. The ideal slide, and let's jump back to that solution slide for a second. The ideal solution slide or the problem slide is a single sentence, a single declarative sentence. And it should read something like this. We solve that problem by doing X, Y, and Z. And the key is when I read that sentence, I should go, oh, when they use your product, that problem goes away. That is the perfect response. Let's talk about, some of the bullet points in here and how we might start to condense some of them. We mentioned that we automate complex, costly, and efficient processes. What's challenging about that, Ed, in my mind, I'm curious your thought here. What's challenging about that in my mind is that could apply to any business. That's like a generic, we automate stuff. That doesn't tell me what you've automated or why it's better or why it's shitty right now. And so we can't just say, quote, automation, right? Cost savings. Our firms save average of $1 million using our product. How? Are they spending $1 million on this now? What specifically are they spending it and where are they saving it? New opportunities, easily expand to new states for increased revenue, explore sites, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. But did we say that specifically expanding to new states is a problem?
That's the connection. At the risk of sounding reductive, I don't want to put words in this founder's mouth, but Will, let me take a stab at potentially what would have worked. For example, if you told me the problem was that developers don't do enough projects in affordable housing and get the tax credit because they can't get tax credits. The solution is going to be developers can now do more affordable projects in affordable housing because we help them get more tax credits. That could be A. Or we could say, oh, you know what? Site selection is super expensive. Developers, like you said, lose $2 billion a year. And the solution is we make site selection so much easier and people save 90% because we automate, et cetera. It's that simple cause effect problem solution. But as you pointed out, there's so much going on that I don't know which problem we're solving and I don't know where to focus for the solution.
You bet. And so let's avoid on our solution statement for any of us, for all the folks listening, let's avoid generic responses like automate, complex, costly, et cetera. That can literally apply to every business. Be highly specific where you can to show exactly where the problem is solved. And again, I think this is a cool business, right? And so when I see something like this, and Ed, you and I get excited about these things, when we start talking about these businesses, I get anxious. I'm actually physically anxious right now because I'm like, this is a great business that is going to get communicated well enough.
Yes. And the thing is, what got me excited about this, and just because I'm a softie and I know you are, deep down, Will, we're talking about affordable housing and making it possible with tax credits and everything. Like it had me from the jump. But then you introduce all this other stuff, and then you start to lose me. But let's follow this train down, and let's just go with affordable housing for a moment. This is the market opportunity slide. Typically, we'll see, a TAM SAM SOM, or we'll talk about how big the market is. Right now, we've got affordable housing site selection as wedged to the home development market. And then you've got this pyramid and a lot of terms, which I don't have inside industry experience or knowledge of. We'll break down a market opportunity slide.
Here's where I get a little bit anxious about this slide. There are so many moving parts here. It's not obvious to me. And again, I think it's fairly well researched. So I want to give the founder credit here. It's not obvious to me where we're starting and where we're ending. Now, typically everybody does TAM SAM SOM, which is essentially what this is right here, and I get it. And Ed, you and I have slightly different opinions on how we use TAM SAM SOM.
For sure,
doesn't matter.
Yep.
What I have to have communicated in this slide is I need you to tell me that initial obtainable market. I love that. Why are we starting there? We're going to ask for a small amount of money relative to what this is. What is it about that initial market that we can thumb the scale, that these are our highest and most likely customers that we'll start with? But again, the why. Tell me, do you have some connection to these folks? Do you have some way to kind of drive their early adopter status? The people in that initial market should be the equivalent of the people that camp out outside the Apple store for days ahead of time to get the latest iPhone. These are your hungriest early adopters. Tell me why they're the hungriest early adopters, and tell me why you've got a special kind of connection to those folks. And here's why that's important. If we can't nail it with this initial folks, if we can't sell iPhones to the people camped out around the corner, the fact that we've got a $7.5 billion bigger market doesn't make a lick of difference. So as the investor, what I want to see on this slide, two things, more important than anything. Who is the initial market we're going after and why? Thanks for writing that there, Ed. And then if that works, how big can this thing get, which is your addressable market, total addressable market of 7.5 billion. But I've got some other stuff here, Ed. I've got 37 billion for, I don't know what LIHTC funded developers, or 230 billion. Those are even bigger markets. And I'm starting to wonder, are those the TAM? Is this the TAM? I get it. You're doing some market expansions, but you've just asked me to process 5 markets. What did you take away from this, Ed?
At the risk of sounding completely crass, you know what I take away? Go to Will's Pitch Deck Perfection course on our website. I got to say, and let me just explain. I've always learned TAM SAM SOM. I help founders do that. But Will has a great way of breaking it down and saying, hey, here's where we're going to start. Here's what we're going to grow into. It is so simple. And I'd much rather have founders start the basics right there. And I'm just going to make this super simple. We're going to send back information to this founder and say, hey, we encourage you to take this course. Will, what's the plug? Like, how did you break this down, and what do they expect if they went to our course to do it your way?
Okay, so the way that I do it, and again, it's in the course. So if you go to Startups.com and go to our education section around pitch deck, you'll find all. We're not hiding this. What I do is I take the slide. On the left side, I say, this is where I'm starting, meaning that initial market, I think it was 400 million or something like that. And why, again, the important part being why. And then on the right side, I say, this is the total addressable market. This is the big market that if we get the thing going on the left working, the thing on the right is sky's the limit.
Simple, it's just straightforward. And Will describes a bottom-up market calculation. You take the total amount of possible users multiplied by what they might spend with you over the year, and there you go, total addressable market.
Right.
The entire industry is not your market. It's literally only the people who would be spending the money. It is everybody, which is total addressable market. But it's a really great way to just start your market calculation by just doing some basic math.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so now moving along, we've got the business model. Again, I appreciate the fact we've got business model up there. State-based subscription pricing with add-on service revenue. They got pricing, and we got 3 boxes.
I don't hate it. Ed, what's your take on it?
It's got the basics in there for sure.
I get it. Okay, $25,000 a year. That makes sense to me. Nationwide, $250,000 annually. I don't know I'm assuming it's commercial market. I don't know the commercial market well enough to know that that they have a comparable spend of where they would otherwise put that money now nationally. I say that because whenever I look at a business model and I look at a revenue model, what have you, I always look at how is the customer spending their money now, and how compelling will this be for them to shift that spend to us? For example, a commercial realty firm or developer, let's say, is already spending $100,000 on a statewide system now, and this is 75% cheaper. Then I'm like, oh damn, that's incredible. But if they're not spending anywhere near this right now, it's hard for me to get excited about the revenue model.
Will, you bring up a really good point. Let's back up the train for a moment. You said before, why is this a market? Why is this a problem? Same thing with business models, everybody. Just because everybody else charges a subscription or you think that's the way it's going to go, Will just pointed out a very important principle. Why? Is it different? Are people used to paying it? Is it going to be a savings to them? SaaS was this massive explosion where, hey, I don't have to like pay for a license and pay $500 or $1,000 for software. Now I can pay monthly because it's going to be on the cloud. And everyone said SaaS. And then that became the default. But then people start forgetting why we're charging that. So if you can explain to the investor, this is the model, and just be super clear and just say, hey, we're charging a subscription pricing plus add-ons, and give why, then you're going to be so much further ahead than so many other founders that arbitrarily pick a business model because that's the default.
Yeah, exactly. And again, what I love seeing on the revenue model is our customers are going to jump over themselves to spend this money because it's so much cheaper than what they're doing now. It saves them so much. It makes them so much. Make that really obvious in the revenue model slide.
And I would say just, you can simplify it. If you just said, we're charging a subscription-based pricing model based on state, with add-on revenue to save, money compared to what they're normally paying. And then you just had pricing. That's all you have to do. Well, this is more like a projection. Again, these are numbers that I don't understand. You've already told me what they're going to spend. And so we don't need to project here. We don't need this going on yet. Just tell me how you're charging, making money, and why it makes sense. That's what I say.
Absolutely. Keep it simple.
All right, let's move on to here. We've got the team slide next, and let's do it this way, Will. Okay, Will, before I show you this team slide, tell us what you expect as an investor. What's an effective team slide?
What it's not. Let's
Okay, yeah.
Start
there. Start there.
It's not a company directory. For some reason, folks, and I get it. I understand why. I think for some reason, a lot of folks are like, hey, we need to list every person that works here, as if someone's doing an audit of our staff. That is not the case. No one cares. The team slide is designed to say, this is why our expertise, the best of what we have as a team, specifically fulfills this business's need. Okay. So let's take an example. Ed, you and I are starting a business. Okay. Whatever the business is going to be, you and I have very long resumes. You got a kind of way of saying we're old dudes, right? and we've got a million things that we've done.
We're old. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But the only thing that's going to make it to our team slide is the best of what we've done, the top 2 or 3 things that specifically relate to this business. Now, we might have 6 other people that are on the team in some capacity, and that's all well and good. However, unless those people are absolutely critical to getting across the message that we are fully qualified to do this, they don't need to be on the slide. So with that said, let's take a look at what we got.
Right. So, Will, here we go. What do you think?
Let's see. Successful technical founders with real estate experience and proven ability to execute. Amazing. Okay, great. I love a lot of things about this slide right off the gate. And so let's just say this. Number one, I love that they used logos. Okay. The interesting thing about logos is that it instantly conveys credibility.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, let's take Carlos on the right. Before I even know what Carlos has done, I see CNN.
Right here, yep.
To be fair, I actually don't know how it ties in yet. I haven't read it yet. Okay.
Yeah.
However, using a logo is such a clever and powerful way to convey exactly who has trusted you in the past. Okay. So now if we look at Sang's stuff, I see Equifax, that's recognizable. I see Altisource, I think it says Altisource, which may be something that's really important in the real estate world. Maybe not, maybe it has nothing to do with it. But that's sort of my point. If there's a bunch of logos where the average person will never figure out where they're from or how they're connected, they don't need to be there. It's better to have recognizable stuff. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I didn't work at CNN. Okay. Did you work with CNN? Were they a client of yours? Were they trusted you in some way? Obviously, if you're not connected to them in any meaningful way, don't put that there. Being able to use those logos is super powerful, and I'm glad that the team did it. The next thing that I love that they did, they kept their bylines short. Co-founder of 3 successful tech companies, 1 exit, growing vertical SaaS. Now, that doesn't tell me anything about how he has real estate experience. Okay, so that concerns me a little. Maybe he doesn't. But the fact that I'm not sure of that reading that concerns me. Ed, what do you think?
Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there is. It depends how you position it. What I do like, this is what I like, Will, startup experience, right? Understanding exits and everything. That says a lot. But you are correct in the sense that you've told me founders with real estate experience and proven ability to execute. This is where the headline is fantastic. Do not get me wrong. This, Will, I think I speak on behalf of both of us, and I say, I wish every deck was formatted like this with a big stark headline. So fantastic job. They're paying attention. Okay. Great for the founder. This bodes well. But then the other thing is, the more generic, or like if you don't really fine tune those headlines, you can leave some things to the imagination, and then that trust starts to erode. So even though all the format and all the pieces are there, I think that you could probably rearrange everything to just support what you're saying up at the top.
You bet. And let me say this, as team slides go, this is in the top 10% of what I see. But I'm going to be very clear. Like, while I can nitpick a few things, I'm really happy with what the founder did here. And I got to say, this is definitely not what we tend to see. What I expected to see, and what I thought was interesting before you showed it to me, what I expected to see was 14 people yearbook style, right? With every detail of every person's lives, like where they went to school, how many kids they have, the fact they like long walks on the beach. And I love the fact that it was focused. This is a very good team slide.
Yeah, I kind of knew. Well, once you see this pattern, like I was kind of setting you up because I thought it was a good slide. Let's take a look at the traction. Okay, so now we got traction, go to market, combining those, that's going to be problems. But let's talk about the start headline. I like it. 80,000 in committed ARR and in use by prominent development firms in affordable housing. And you got traction, you got the commitment, growth strategy, and expand. So 1, 2, 3.
Couple things. Number one, I think you touched on it, Ed. The headline is so important. And let's pause on this for just a second, Ed, because this applies to everybody. Every slide needs a single summary sentence that says, if you don't understand anything else we put below this sentence, here's what we want you to take away. Now, two things are going to happen here. Either number one, investor looks at that headline and says, yeah, I'm good enough for now, and moves on. Best possible outcome, by the way. Best possible outcome. Or they're like, okay, I guess I'll read all this other stuff to see how it fits in. And it almost never does, by the way. Like Eddie, I'm sure you see this all the time where people are using charts and graphs and everything, and it only makes sense to the founder. And so always. So with that said, let's go back to the slide, Ed. All right. So the first line obviously just covers what they said in the headline. Second, growth strategy. Developers are a close-knit community engaged via referrals and industry events. It's interesting because, Ed, this is traction and go-to-market. I don't see these connected very often.
I'm going to point that out. I'm going to make things more complicated for this here. But like, if you look at traction should be its own slide. And Will, as you always say, I want to know the state of the product. I want to know validation, and then growth in some form or another. And the go-to-market is a completely separate thing. Traction is almost like, this is what we've accomplished so far. Go-to-market is this what we're going to be doing. Now, here's the thing. I took a preview and I looked ahead of time at this. And Will, here, so if we're looking at traction, they've got testimonials, which is traction. So in my mind, Will, I've got $80,000 committed, and I got customers who already love our product and they're giving us testimonials. That's a great traction slide.
Yeah, let's split these slides out. Let's put testimonials in traction with the 80K MRR, which is awesome. And let's talk about our go-to-market strategy totally separately.
Yes.
And before you go on, though, I want to go to expand. Beyond developers and syndicates to consultants and government agencies, data provider to real estate investment products and firms, become a platform like Archis, enabling, there's a lot there. Another reason maybe why I'd want to expand this slide out and maybe represent it just a little bit differently, because when we're talking about our growth strategies to these developers, close-knit community, we're not being super specific as to, is this an outside sales effort? Is this inside sales, outside sales? How do we find these people? If we're saying it's a close-knit community and we're saying there's exactly 32,000 of them, then I would say that we're targeting specifically 32,000 people, which we can identify and call on in a very deliberate manner.
Right. So if I had to expand this growth strategy, the seeds are there, the foundation. But if you said, developers are a close-knit community and we found them, then your strategy would be, therefore, we're going to use community building, referrals. You're going to explain. So it needs to be strategy. Yeah. And that's the reason, combining the two, you're shortchanging yourself, because you're basically preventing you from featuring everything possibly that you can with your space in a way that doesn't get confusing. Because as we saw, Will had that cognitive friction. He's like, I don't see traction, and there's go-to-market strategy. Together, that's the problem that we caused with this slide. Okay, let's move on here. Competitive landscape. Doculate AI uniquely serves this market and grows from there. And then we're the only product that does this, turbocharged site selection, and then a bunch of bullet points.
I don't like it. Again, I like the product. I want to be clear. Like, when I say I don't like it, I don't like this presentation of it. And it goes back to something we said earlier, which is I get anxious when there's a product I really like and a founder I really like, but I'm like, this could be said so much better. Here's what we want our competition slide to say. We want our competition slide to actually start from, what does the customer want? What does the customer need so badly that they're not getting elsewhere? That is the focus of this slide. The reason I say that is because, Ed, as you know, most people don't do that. Almost every competition slide that I see looks something like this. Here is either a quadrant where we're up in the top right and everybody else sucks, or here's a grid. of every feature that we have and a bunch of checkboxes and X's as to what people don't have. In both cases, those are nearly impossible to understand. And when I say impossible to understand them the way that matters to the customer. Saying that we do these two things on an axis in the top right doesn't immediately tell me why the customer buys from us every time when given the option. What would do that is if I said customers buy from Doculi because we allow them to do site selection at 10% of their existing costs and get 10x more ROI on their investments. And what we say is, here's the way that they're doing it now, and here's why it doesn't do that. Here's the other platforms they use, and here's why they don't do it. Give me an obvious reason why your customer is buying from you and not your competitor, and you will nail the competitive landscape.
And that's the other thing where careful what inside information you're assuming they have. If you break things down, as Will talked about, then anybody's going to be able to understand. And all of that's prioritized to the customer, as he talked about. Make it easy for the investor to understand what's going on, is what it boils down to. That actually is the last slide.
Okay.
Talk about, Will, what other slides? We didn't have the ask slide, which is kind of the main one. Just give us a quick summary on what an ask slide is.
Okay, so the ask slide is super simple. All it says is, this is how much we're asking for. This is the stage of our investment, pre-seed, seed, Series A, et cetera. And this is what we hope to get accomplished by the end of this round. And here's what I mean. If we're asking for $1 million, here's what's important. It's not what people think. People think use of funds. They say, we're asking for $1 million and here's how we're going to spend it. Sure. To be honest, if you've been doing this long enough as an investor, every single use of funds looks almost identical. Mm-hmm. You're going to spend it in one of three places. You're going to spend it either on people, on marketing, or on OpEx, right? Like almost in every case. So telling me your percentage breakdown doesn't do a ton. Now, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying understand how little value that actually conveys. The real value to this slide is telling me what you'll get done with this money over the next 12 to 18 months. Because what I really want to hear right now when I see this, okay, we're going to spend this money and at the end of this, we're going to have a working prototype that we can start charging customers on. Awesome. That tells me that at the end of this, we'll be able to raise more money because we'll be raising with a working prototype at that point. That's what I'm focused on. Show me the milestone of what you're going to build with this money, what you're going to get done with this money. That's going to make you so attractive for the next round.
Here's another one for you. I'm going to fire them off because one of the other slides we're missing that I would have loved to seen, and I know it's peppered in through this deck, is a clear how it works slide. Will walk us through the how it works slide.
Sure. So for the how it works slide, and I think we kind of had one earlier in this deck, but that's okay.
Yeah.
The how it works slide, it again, isn't what people think it is. People think it's an instruction manual for literally how the product works. In other words, they think like we see this all the time. Ed, tell me if you see this. Step 1, user creates account. Step 2, user logs into mobile app. Step 3, user, of course, that's how a mobile app works. You're not telling me anything. Mm-hmm. So instead, what we want to be able to say is what the user gets done. So it's always a 3-step process. The first step is, what did the user set out to do, right? What was their problem going into this? A lot of people will think about that. Like, well, Will, didn't we say that in the problem slide? Yeah, sure, maybe. But the investor didn't remember it by the time they got to this slide. So assuming that they've already figured that all out is wrong. Plus, we want to set it up. So step 1 is, user is having this problem. In other words, commercial developer is trying to find a site in the state of Ohio and has 30 days to do it in limited budget. Awesome. That's step 1. Step 2 is, this is what they did with our product to accomplish that goal. So step 2 would simply be, when they used our AI platform, it instantly found 5 available sites within a week and saved them $30,000, right? Just that simple, that focused. The third step is, what was the outcome? When they finished using the product, how did it solve that problem specifically? And that's where we say developer now can start to do 10x more site selections than they could before, or faster, or whatever essentially our solution is. That is the cadence of a perfect how it works slide.
But why, Will, when I can bake in all the features and what it does, all the bells and whistles, why do I need a specific slide that makes it very simple? Let's break it down to the absolute basics, just for the how it works slide, because a lot of times, I think that founders, what they think is it's kind of like too basic or elementary, or they make it overly complicated. But I'm doing it just for this founder because I know I'm going to be saying, hey, we need a how it works slide. And I always want to explain why.
Yeah, well, in this particular case, I think it's a great way to showcase how successful our customer is when they use our product. Because really what we're doing is we're opening up the problem and we're finishing with the solution and showing the value and just showing a simple mechanism of why our product worked so easily. We keep it simple. It's not a demo. How it works is not a comprehensive demo. That is a whole other process that never has anything to do with your pitch deck. There might be a thing where somebody wants an actual demo. If you're really good at your pitch deck, you never even have to do a demo because you've conveyed the value so well.
And here's another factor that's coming up these days, Will, is AI. So AI washing all over the place. And now you better explain how your AI works in a simple way.
Yep.
Is it a ChatGPT wrapper? Are you using existing LLM? Do you have your own proprietary data? And I don't need a full white paper. I don't need your technical documentation, but that's going to make a big, significant, like a major difference when you're approaching investors, because all over, like we go right from this cover. This is my contention here, Will. I understand, start to pick up the problem solution, but as soon as you say it's AI powered and you don't actually kind of give me the tea leaves or the mechanics in the sense that I know how it's going to work, you don't have to explain everything to me, then I'm going to have an issue with saying something is AI powered.
Right. I agree. Well, look, just for folks in the audience, the problem right now is everything's AI powered.
Exactly.
It's become the most generic pixie dust of all time. And so unless we say, as you're saying it, specifically what AI is doing that is so unique that other people otherwise would not be doing with AI, it's become this catch-all for things magically get better. We have to be able to say exactly how we're using it to get a much different result than what people get now.
I will tell you, investors, they are not having a good time. Like more and more, I see investors, it's like AI pitch fatigue, like more AI demos and this and that. And that's why we're bringing this all to you, because that's what we do here at Startups.com. We're going to keep you posted on the pulse, what's going on the industry. I'm warning all of you founders, as soon as you say AI, you better start approaching it in a specific way and have your game all figured out when you're going to be pitching.
100%.
All right. Well, what's your takeaway? I'm just going to do this because I really would love this founder to succeed, right? Based on what I'm seeing. So, as we scan through these slides, just as a review, what's your big takeaway on what this founder can do right away after watching this review?
I'm sure he's taking notes on this, what have you. We just want to simplify a little bit. I mean, again, I think all the ingredients are all here. This is a good deck. It's a good business. It's a good deck. We need to simplify it. We need to focus it a bit more. And by the way, this is our response to 100% of decks. So it's not like, oh, this is the deck that needs to be simplified and focused. Every deck we look at needs to be simplified and focused. So this is across the board. But we use really an Occam's razor approach where we take away as much as possible until only what's absolutely required is left, because that's the most focused part.
And I will be just very transparent. One of the hard things is I'll say, hey, you need a Stark headline. Let's get it all into one summary sentence up at the top. And then a founder will come back to me and there'll be 3 headlines or a bunch of bullets. This founder has proven that they can do the headlines up at the top. As far as technique is concerned, this founder competent in terms of putting a slide deck together. It's just you're in your own head, and sometimes it's tough to see the forest through the trees, and that's what we're here for. I give tons of props and kudos for how this deck came across, Will.
I agree. Again, it's a good product, and clearly the founder is competent. The difference is we just want to streamline it a bit. We want to make this really easy to understand. We want to make it so that when we put the deck down, we only have a couple of concepts in our head, right? And only the ones that are the most important to the success of this product.
Will, we do this every single Tuesday. Let's do something different. What's your encouragement to all the founders that are who are going to be watching, going to come to the next one? How can they prepare their decks to have us look at them? Like, what would you invite them to do with us?
You know what's interesting, Ed? Kind of a curveball answer here. Don't do a thing. Give us your raw clay. And here's why I say that, right? Give us your raw clay. I mean, do your best, of course, right?
Sure.
But I think you learn through this process. And, I see some friends that we have in the audience right now, and they've been through this process, and they're incredible learners. Don't worry about sending us a deck and say, boy, I hope they find nothing wrong with it or have no feedback. That would be damn near impossible, okay? The goal isn't to send us a deck and just have it be a high five fest of what a great job you did, right? The goal is to learn the techniques for how to build these decks. The goal is to figure out what about your pitch you could look at differently. Now, you could look at everything Ed and I just said today about this deck and say, bullshit. I think all of it's wrong. I'm going with what I got. I feel good about it. And you know what? You'll probably be okay. Could you have a better version? Yes, of course. That's sort of the point, right? We're not saying that if you don't take all of our advice, you'll never raise money. We're saying if you take all of our advice, you'll probably have a better chance. That's it.
Let me double click on that, Will. I'm going to just latch on to what you said, because letting us demonstrate this with raw clay not only helps you, but helps the other founders the other community, because I know for a fact, Will, people will watch us talk about another founder's pitch deck and they'll say, oh, snap, I didn't do that, or I got to work on mine. And then they go, scurry off and they improve their deck. And that's what we're here for. That's the community, Will. That's the benefit of what we're doing here.
You bet. And, Ed, I say, like, I've been a big fan of this as being a startup founder, and I think you got to get good at this. Being okay with being wrong is awesome, right? Like, so to get inside our heads at Startups.com, when we sit as a management team and we're talking about concepts and things we want to build, et cetera, we have a universal understanding amongst us, which is none of us knows the answer. That's the whole point. We're all figuring it out as we go. And I think just over time, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I'm just used to not having the answer and being able to just try a million things. So when I say bring us your raw clay, try a bunch of stuff. Let's see what sticks. Let's see what works. But don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Be afraid to not try something out of your comfort zone.
That's it for us. We are here every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesdays, we do pitch decks. Wednesday, we do traction hacking, revenue acceleration. Thursdays, we do AMA. We get to ask a whole bunch of questions and just talk about everything that is on your mind. And we always want to be talking to you, interacting. We appreciate all you founders out there. Will, pleasure as always. I'm going to see you next week.
Let's see you guys. Take care.